The meteor shower had been going on for 3 days before anyone thought to check the beach. Not that anyone on KFIV had much time for beaches. The colony was dying, everyone knew it. The ore veins that had brought 400 families to this small, airless moon were nearly gone. The company had already pulled 2 shuttle routes. Half the school was empty. Ren Aldrich's best friend had left 6 weeks ago with a single bag and a quick goodbye, and Ren had not made another friend since. He was 12 years old, and he was very good at being alone. That afternoon, while his father was underground and his mother was arguing on a comm call with the company's regional office, Ren pulled on his environment suit and walked out through the colony's east airlock. Nobody stopped him. Nobody noticed. The ash shore was what the colonists called the long stretch of black beach east of the colony perimeter, cooled lava from a volcanic event centuries old, smooth and dark and completely silent. The meteor shower had left small craters all along it, little pockmarks in the black rock, still steaming faintly. Ren walked slowly. He was not looking for anything, he was just looking. He almost stepped on it. The object was half buried under a sheet of displaced rock. It was large, bigger than his torso, and roughly oval. Its surface was dark gray and faintly rough, like dried mud. But as Ren crouched beside it, he saw something that made him stop breathing for a second. A dim pulse of blue light moved through it, slow and faint, like a heartbeat seen through thick glass. He brushed the rock away carefully. There was a crack along one side, a long, jagged split that wept a thin, pale vapor into the thin air. The object was warm, he could feel it even through his gloves. Not hot, warm in the way something alive is warm. Ren did not know what it was. The colony's xenobiology database had been offline since the budget cut 3 months ago. He had never seen alien biology up close. The only alien anything he had seen was a fossil fragment in a school case, gray and inert and dead. This was not dead. He sat with it for a long time, thinking. The smart thing was to report it, call the colony administrator, or his father, or Commander Dale's liaison officer, who came by every few weeks. That was the protocol. Unknown object, possible alien origin, report it immediately. Ren looked at the crack, at the pale vapor seeping out, at the faint pulse that was getting slightly slower the longer it sat in the cold. He took off his outer jacket, wrapped the egg carefully, and carried it home. Getting it through the airlock without being seen took patience. Getting it to his room took luck. Hiding it under his bunk took a blanket, a thermal sheet he borrowed from the greenhouse module without asking, and 2 heat lamps repositioned very carefully. He worked quietly and quickly. His mother's call was still going in the next room. His father would not be back until the night shift ended. The crack was still there, the vapor was still seeping, but the pulse, he was almost sure, was a little steadier now. He checked the temperature with his suit sensor. Not right, too cool. He adjusted the lamps. Better. He sat on the floor next to the bunk and watched the faint blue light move through the shell. In and out, slow and even, like breathing. Over the next 3 days, Ren barely slept. He kept the lamps running. He checked the temperature every hour. He read everything he could find about incubation on the colony's limited data archive, which was mostly about chickens and a few livestock species, and applied what seemed logical. He stole an extra thermal blanket from the supply room and felt only slightly guilty about it. On the second day, the crack began to close. He watched it happen over the course of an afternoon, the edges of the split pulling slowly back toward each other, the vapor thinning, the surface knitting itself with a faint crystalline sound like cooling glass. By evening it was sealed. By the next morning it was smooth. The pulse was stronger now, brighter. Ren started to feel something he could not explain, a sensation of being watched, but not from outside, from within the egg. A presence, faint and foreign and curious, that pressed gently at the edge of his awareness like a hand against a window. He told himself he was imagining it. He kept the lamps on anyway. On the 7th night, the egg moved. Just slightly, a shift of weight, a small tremor. Ren was sitting on the floor eating a protein bar when it happened, and he went very still. The shell darkened at one end, then split wider, and then a small wet creature the size of a large cat tumbled out of the wreckage and landed directly in his lap. It was dark, he could not see well. He grabbed his torch. The creature looked up at him. Its eyes were bright and gold and completely alert. It opened a small mouth full of very sharp teeth, and it made a sound, not a roar, not a cry, but a short, clear, questioning chirp. As if it already knew who he was and simply wanted confirmation. Ren stared at it for a long moment. His heart was hammering. His hands were not shaking yet, but they would be soon. "Hi," he said quietly, because he could not think of anything better. The creature chirped again, tilted its head, blinked its gold eyes. Ren exhaled slowly. "Okay," he said. "Okay, you're okay." And in some way he did not have words for yet. He already knew that whatever came next, the colony, his father's arguments, the dying mine, all of it, something had just changed completely. She ate half of Ren's protein bar that first night. Then she ate the wrapper. She looked at him afterward, as if daring him to say something about it. He named her Sora. It was a word his grandmother had used for the open sky, not in any official language, just a family word, soft and simple. It suited her. She had a way of taking up space that felt larger than her body, as if the air around her bent slightly to notice her. For the first week, she was manageable, strange and alarming, but manageable. She was the size of a house cat, covered in dark overlapping scales that shimmered faintly blue in low light. Her wings were folded tight against her back and looked too large for her body, like a coat she had not grown into yet. She slept curled against the heat lamp, made a low sound when content that Ren could only call a purr, and watched everything with those sharp gold eyes. On day 9, she spoke. Not a word exactly, more of a sound that carried a shape. She had been watching him eat breakfast, and she made a noise that meant, very clearly, "Give me that." When he laughed and offered her a piece of dry flatbread, she took it with precise, careful teeth and made a different sound, lower, approving. By the end of the second week, she was producing short human words. By the end of the third, she was producing short human sentences. By the end of the month, she was correcting his pronunciation. "You said that wrong," she told him, when he tried to teach her the word consequence. She had been trying to understand the concept. "Say it again, slower." "Consequence," Ren said. "Why is the middle part soft?" "That's just how it is." "That is not a reason." He liked her immediately and completely, the way you like someone who never pretends to be less than they are. She was growing fast. By 6 weeks, she was the size of a medium dog. By 8 weeks, she was the size of a large one and beginning to be a serious logistical problem. The thermal blanket no longer covered her. She knocked over Ren's desk twice in one afternoon because her tail had not yet caught up with her spatial awareness. She singed the corner of his bunk, trying to sneeze quietly, which produced a flame roughly the size of Ren's head, and then looked at the scorched metal with an expression of offended surprise. "You breathe fire," Ren said. "Apparently," Sora said. Keeping her hidden was becoming impossible. The colony was small, walls were thin. His father noticed the heat lamp missing from the garage, but said nothing, which meant he was tired. His mother noticed the increased food consumption from Ren's ration account and asked if he was going through a growth phase, which Ren confirmed with what he hoped was a convincing face. At night, after the colony went quiet, Ren would sit on the floor and they would talk. He taught her words and she demanded explanations for the rules behind them. She asked about planets. She asked about death, matter-of-factly, the way someone asks about weather. She asked why humans smelled like metal and electricity and whether that was normal or a medical problem. She asked about the colony, the mine, why things were dying here. He told her the truth. He was better at the truth than at pretending anyway. She listened carefully. When he was done, she said, "You are not happy here." "Not lately," he said. "Were you happy before?" He thought about it, sometimes. She seemed to consider this. "I think," she said, "that humans are built for more than this, than small rooms and tired parents and not enough food." He looked at her. "What are you built for?" Her gold eyes caught the lamp light. "I am still finding out," she said. It was the most honest thing he had ever heard anyone say. 2 days after that conversation, Wren got the colony's xenobiology database back online. It had been a corrupted index file, a minor fix, once he found it. He sat down to search for Sora's species and found it in under 3 minutes. Dracari, ancient, spacefaring, one of the oldest known civilizations in the outer spiral, proud, powerful, and deeply, precisely territorial about their bloodline. He read about their queen, Varath, called the Undying. He read the diplomatic incident logs. A human survey ship had once accidentally landed on a Dracari sacred site, and the Dracari had responded by blockading an entire human sector for a year. He read about the Dracari concept of bloodline purity. He read about what they had done to a smuggler who had been caught with a single Dracari scale in his cargo hold. He read all of it in one sitting, and by the end his face was white and his hands were cold. Sora was reading over his shoulder. She had been the whole time. She was large enough now to rest her chin on his head without trying, which she did sometimes when she wanted to see his screen. He had stopped finding it startling. When he finished, neither of them spoke for a moment. "Sora," he said carefully. "I know," she said. "That queen. I know. She's your. I know, Ren's." He turned to look at her. Her expression was as readable to him now as any human face, the tightness around her eyes, the way her wings pressed closer to her body. She was not frightened, she was thinking. "Do you want to go?" he asked. He kept his voice even. "I would not stop you, I would never stop you." She looked at him for a long time, and then she folded herself down next to him on the floor the way she always did, pressed warm and solid against his side, and said nothing. Which was its own kind of answer. 3 sectors away, a Dracari war fleet quietly changed course. The alert came at dawn. Not a slow build, no distant contact signal, no hours of tracking a blip on the long-range scanner. One moment the system was empty. The next moment 3 Dracari dreadnoughts and a carrier dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and every alarm on Kiev IV went off at the same time. Ren was already awake. He had been awake for most of the night. The colony went from asleep to panicked in under 4 minutes. His father came running from the command block. His mother pulled Ren into the main room and held onto him with both hands while the emergency lights turned everything red. Outside, through the small viewport above the kitchen table, the sky looked the same as always, black and full of stars. Then it changed. 4 shapes, barely visible, enormous even at this distance, just sitting there, not moving. No weapons fire, no jamming signal. The Dracari did not scramble communication or cut power. They did something that was, in its own way, much worse. They transmitted a message. A single, calm, perfectly translated message delivered in every human language simultaneously through every open channel on the moon. "You have something that belongs to us. Return it. You have 1 rotation of your star." That was all. The colony's command room was small and crowded with frightened people, and Ren stood at the back of it and said nothing while everyone argued about what the Dracari could possibly mean. Someone suggested it was a mining rights dispute. Someone else suggested they had accidentally crossed into claimed space. The colony's security officer was trying to reach Commander Dale's ship, which was stationed 2 hours away. Ren knew what they meant. He had known the moment the alert sounded. He waited until the room was slightly less chaotic, and then he walked to the front of it, and he said, clearly enough to be heard, "I know what they want." Everyone looked at him. His father looked at him. The expression on his father's face was one Ren had never seen before, not anger, not worry, but a kind of stunned waiting, as if some part of him had already known something was wrong. Ren told them everything, from the ash shore to the egg to the hatching to the heat lamps, from the first chirp to the first word. He described Sora clearly and plainly. He did not apologize. He did not make excuses. He answered every question that was thrown at him in the silence that followed. The colony administrator, a tired woman named Pret, stared at him for a very long time. You have been hiding a Drakari dragon in your bedroom for 2 months, she said. Yes. The Dragon Queen's hatchling. I think so, yes. Another long pause. Why didn't you report it? Ren thought about this seriously, the way the question deserved. Because she was cracked and cold, and I didn't think reports would be fast enough, he said. And then later, because she asked me not to, and I thought that was her right. Nobody in the room seemed to know what to do with that. Commander Dale arrived by fast shuttle 2 hours later, and Ren had to explain it all again. Dale was tall and severe, and had the kind of face that had spent a long career refusing to show surprise. She almost managed it. When Ren finished speaking, she looked at the ceiling for a moment, then looked back at him. Can I meet her? Dale asked. Sora was in Ren's room. She had grown again since last night. She was now large enough that she could not stand fully upright without her horns scraping the ceiling. She was sitting with her wings folded and her tail coiled neatly around herself, and she watched Dale enter the room with calm, appraising eyes. Dale looked at her for a long moment. Sora looked back. Hello, Sora said. Dale blinked, recovered. Hello. You are worried, Sora said. You are calculating whether I am a threat. I am not to you. Dale glanced at Ren, then back at Sora. Can you speak to the fleet? They would not listen to me, Sora said. I am the hatchling. In Drakari hierarchy, a hatchling does not negotiate. She paused, but my mother would listen to Ren. The room went very quiet. Your mother, Dale said carefully. Queen Varath, Sora said. I have been thinking about this since last night. She will not speak to diplomats. She will not speak to officers. She came herself, which means she is not here for politics. She is here because she believed I was dead, and now she knows I am not, and she is, Sora paused, choosing the word with unusual care, not calm. Dale opened a channel to the Drakari fleet. The response came back in 40 seconds, not from a fleet officer, not from a communications relay. The voice that filled the command room was enormous, even through the speakers, low and resonant, and carrying a weight that had nothing to do with volume. It was a voice that had been speaking to civilizations for centuries. It said, in perfect human standard, put the boy on. Dale looked at Ren. Every adult in the room looked at Ren. He was 12 years old, and he was standing in a colonial command room with red emergency lights still blinking overhead, and the Dragon Queen of the Outer Spiral was waiting for him on the other end of a comm channel. He stepped forward and picked up the transmitter. This is Ren Aldrich, he said. I'm the one who found the egg. A pause, long enough that the entire room held its breath. Then the voice said, quieter now, and with something in it that was harder to name, is she alive? Yes, Ren said. She's right here. She's fine. She's been fine for a while now. Another pause. When the voice came back, it was very controlled, very careful, the way something enormous is careful when it is afraid to break what it holds. I am coming down, said Queen Varath. Do not be frightened. Ren looked around at a room full of frightened adults and thought that that last part was probably not meant for him. They did not go to Varath. Varath came to them. A single Drakari shuttle descended from the carrier, black and enormous, shaped like something between a blade and a wing. It landed 200 meters from the colony's east airlock and simply waited. No soldiers poured out, no weapons deployed. The hatch opened, and 4 Drakari emerged in a slow, deliberate line. 3 were soldiers, scaled in dark armor that caught the light like oil on water. The 4th was old, pale-scaled, slow-moving, with eyes that carried the particular weight of someone who had outlived most of their opinions. That one introduced himself, in careful human standard, as Elder Riss. He was the Queen's counselor. He would escort them aboard. He spoke politely, without condescension, which was somehow more unsettling than if he had been rude. Commander Dale prepared to go alone, as protocol required. Sora sat on Ren before he could move toward the door. Not aggressively, she simply folded herself down onto him with her full weight, pinning him gently but completely to the floor. She was the size of a workhorse now, and there was no shifting her. She goes with the boy, Sora told Elder Riss without looking up, or she does not go. Riss studied Ren for a moment, a flat, assessing look that seemed to be reading something Ren could not see. Then he inclined his head. Acceptable, he said, as if it were perfectly ordinary. The inside of the Dracari carrier was built for creatures 5 times the size of a human. Every corridor was a vast dark hall. The ceiling disappeared into shadow above them. The air smelled of ozone and something older, like stone after rain. Ren walked between Sora and Dale with his hands in his pockets and tried not to look as small as he felt. The soldiers they passed in the corridors stared, not with curiosity, with contempt, open and unapologetic, the way the powerful look at things they consider beneath notice. Ren met their eyes when they stared at him. He did not look away first. He was not sure why, it just seemed important. They were brought to a chamber near the center of the ship. Queen Varath filled it. She was not the biggest thing Ren had ever seen. That distinction belonged to the ore freighters that used to dock at the colony. But she was the most present. It was difficult to explain, except that the room seemed to rearrange itself around her, as if space itself was making accommodations. Her scales were black gold, layered like overlapping blades. Her eyes were the amber color of a dying star, and they were old in a way that had no comparison in Ren's experience. She was looking at Sora. The look lasted a long time. Something passed between them that had no words, a recognition, a grief, a rage, and beneath all of it, something raw and enormous that Ren understood even though he had no name for it. Then Varath looked at him. Elder Riss spoke. The Queen asks, "What right did you claim, human child, to touch the bloodline of queens?" Ren thought about the question. He gave it the time it deserved. Then he said, "I didn't claim any right. I found something hurt. I fixed it as best I could. I didn't know what it was until later, and by then it didn't matter." Riss translated. Varath listened. Her expression did not change. She spoke again. Riss said, "She asks why you were alone on the shore." So Ren told her about the dying colony, about the ore running out, about the school going half empty, about his father's exhausted silences and his mother's arguments through the wall. He was not trying to make her feel anything. He was just answering the question, plainly, the way he always answered questions. The Queen was silent for a long moment after Riss finished translating. Then she turned to Sora and spoke in a different language, older, more resonant, each syllable carrying weight like dropped stones. Sora answered. The conversation was quiet and went on for several minutes. Ren watched Sora's face and could read parts of it, the tension in her jaw, the moments of something that looked like grief, the longer stretch of something that looked like decision. At the end of it, Sora turned to Ren. "She wants to know if I want to come home," she said. Ren looked at her. He had been preparing for this moment in the back of his mind for weeks, since the night he read the database entry and the fleet appeared in the sky. He had made himself ready to hear this answer. He spoke carefully. "What do you want?" he asked. Sora held his gaze. "I want both things," she said. "I want to know her, and I will not leave you." There was a silence in the chamber. Then Elder Riss stepped forward and said, very quietly, not to Varath, but to Commander Dale, "There is something you should know about how the egg came to be on that beach." Dale looked at him. "Go on." Riss spoke for a few minutes. His voice was steady and careful, and each word landed like something he had been waiting to put down for a long time. He told Dale about a faction within the Dracari court, nobles who had wanted the royal line to end, who had arranged for the egg to be stolen during a raid 3 months before Ren found it. He told her about the ship that jettisoned the egg over HFY when it was intercepted by a patrol, gambling that the cold moon would finish what they had started. Dale absorbed this. "The Queen doesn't know," she said. "She will," Riss said, "tonight." Dale looked at the floor for a moment, then back at the ancient counselor. "Why are you telling me?" Riss glanced at Ren. "Because the boy should know," he said, "that he did not find an accident. He found the wreckage of a coup, and he fixed it with 2 heat lamps and a stolen blanket." He paused. "Your species produces remarkable children." Dale said nothing for a moment. Then quietly, We try. In the center of the chamber, Varath was still watching Ren. He did not look away, neither did she. It was not a contest. It was something more like two creatures in a dark forest, each deciding the other was not a threat, each deciding, slowly, that the other might be something else entirely. Varath spoke one more time. Riss translated. The Queen says that she has looked for her daughter for 3 months across 40 systems. She was told the egg was destroyed. She came here expecting to collect remains and hold someone accountable. He paused. She says she did not expect a small human boy who smells like machine oil and kept the lamps running. Ren looked up at the Queen's enormous face. I just didn't want her to be cold, he said. Riss translated. Varath was very still. Something moved across her ancient face that was difficult to watch, because it was too large and too genuine for the room that contained it. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, something had shifted, the way the sky shifts just before weather changes. The audience, Riss announced quietly, was not over. There was still the matter of what came next. Sora stated her position the way she stated most things, clearly, without apology and in front of everyone. I will return to the Dominion, she said. Her voice was calm. She was sitting upright, wings folded, tail still, the posture Ren had come to recognize as her most serious one. I will learn what I need to learn. I will know my mother and my people. She paused. And Ren comes with me. The Drakari Council chamber erupted. Varath had summoned her senior advisors for this final discussion. They filled the room, 7 ancient, enormous Drakari in various shades of dark scale and older fury, each one radiating the specific outrage of someone whose entire understanding of how the world works has just been lightly disregarded. They spoke over each other in their own language, and Ren did not need a translation to follow the general shape of what they were saying. A human bonded to royal blood, into the Dominion? Absolutely not. Elder Riss stood to one side and watched it all with the mild expression of someone who had already done the math and was simply waiting for everyone else to finish. Commander Dale stood near the door. She had gone very still in the way she went still when she was thinking hard and did not want anyone to see it. Ren stood in the middle of all of it and did not move. He was the smallest thing in the room by a very large margin. Varath let the council speak for 2 minutes. Then she made a single sound, low, brief, final, and the room went silent the way a room goes silent when lightning strikes nearby. She looked at her council, then she looked at Riss. Riss spoke carefully in the old language, the formal one, the one Ren had heard him use only twice before. He spoke for a while. He cited something, then cited it again. He seemed to be reading from memory. When he finished, the silence in the room was different from the one before, denser, with an edge. One of the councillors said something sharp. Riss replied, still calm, and produced what seemed to be a counter-reference. Another councillor spoke. Riss answered again. This went on for a few minutes, while Ren stood quietly and waited. Eventually, Dale leaned very slightly toward Riss and said, under her breath, "What is happening?" "I am citing the Accord of First Bond," Riss murmured back, not looking away from the council. "It is 800 years old. It establishes that the first caretaker of a Drakari hatchling holds a sacred bond that cannot be legally severed against the hatchling's will." He paused. No one has needed to cite it in 800 years, because no Drakari hatchling has ever been in a position to require it. Dale absorbed this. Is it still valid? All accords are valid until struck. This one has never been struck. Another pause. It is, I admit, somewhat awkward. The council did not look pleased, but the argument had changed shape. It was no longer about whether it was acceptable. It was about whether it was legal, and on that question, Riss was immovable. Varath had not spoken during any of this. She had been watching Ren. Now she did speak. The room stilled again. Riss translated quietly for Ren alone. "She asks you one final question," he said. "If Sora asked you to let her go, if she said to you, 'I want to leave, I want to live apart,' would you?" Ren did not hesitate. "Yes." Without argument. Without argument, he thought for a moment, then added, She's not mine, I just took care of her, those are different things. Riss translated. He was precise about it. He took his time and made sure every word arrived correctly. Varath listened. When Riss finished, she was very still for a long moment. Then she turned to her counsel and spoke. Her tone was not a request. Riss translated for Dale, his voice careful and even. She says, under the Accord of First Bond, the human child Ren Aldrich is formally recognized as Sora's bonded guardian. He is granted the status of Dalvath, which has no exact human equivalent. It means approximately one who is bound to the line by act rather than blood. He is under the protection of the royal house. He may not be harmed, impeded, or removed from Sora's presence without Sora's consent. Dale stared. What does that mean politically? It means, Riss said, with the ghost of something that might have been satisfaction, that the human species now has a formal and legally binding connection to the Dracari royal line, through a child, through a bond of caretaking. He looked at Ren. Your diplomatic corps has been attempting to establish a foothold in Dracari law for 60 years. Dale said nothing for a moment, and a boy on a beach with a heat lamp. Did it in 7 weeks, Riss said. Yes. Dale looked at Ren for a long time. Ren was looking at Sora, who had crossed the chamber to stand beside him, warm and solid and smelling of old rock and something electrical. He reached up without thinking and put one hand against her neck. She lowered her head slightly and made the low sound that meant she was content. One of the counselors said something short and sharp. Riss replied without turning around. Dale asked what had been said. The counselor said that this was a disgrace, Riss said. I told him that dignity has never required comfort. He straightened slightly. He did not respond. Varath looked at Ren one final time. He met her eyes. He wondered what she saw, a small human boy, dusty and tired, still wearing the same environment suit underlayer he had pulled on that morning when the alarms went off. Whatever she saw, her expression had changed from what it was when he first entered this room. The weight was still there, but something else had moved in beside it. She spoke, Riss translated. She says a queen measures what she is owed, but she has spent this hour measuring something else. A pause. She says she owes you a debt. She intends to pay it. She does not yet know how. Ren thought about the dying colony, the empty school, his father's exhausted face. I might have a few ideas, he said. Riss translated. And for the first time in the entire long, enormous, history-bending afternoon, Varath, queen of the Dracari Dominion, undying ruler of the outer spiral, made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was clearly related to one. The council did not know what to do with that either. 3 days later, the Dracari Geological Survey team landed on KFIV. They did not ask permission, exactly. They informed Commander Dale, politely but briefly, that they would be conducting a subsurface scan of the moon as partial fulfillment of the Queen's stated debt, and that the colony's cooperation would be appreciated but was not strictly required since the scan was passive. Dale looked at the 4 enormous Dracari scientists setting up equipment outside the east airlock and decided that cooperation was probably the right call. The results came back in 6 hours. A deep vein deposit of rare ore, the kind used in faster-than-light drive cores, sitting 4 kilometers below the surface, directly beneath the ash shore. Human equipment could not have found it. The Dracari scan had spotted it in an afternoon. The company's regional office received the geological report and called back within the hour, for the first time in months, with a suddenly very different tone. The colony was not dying anymore. Ren's father came home that night and sat at the kitchen table for a long time without speaking. Then he looked at Ren and said, I don't know where to start. Ren said, I can explain most of it. His father said, I know you can, I just need a minute. Ren gave him the minute. That was the most he could offer. His mother cried, not in a bad way. She held on to him for a long time and he let her, because it seemed like the right thing to do and also because it was not unpleasant. She kept saying she did not know how to feel about any of this, which Ren thought was honest and fair. He told her that was okay. He did not fully know either. On his last morning on KFIV, Ren walked to the ash shore alone. Sora had offered to come. He had told her he needed an hour, and she had accepted this without pushing, which was one of the things about her that was easiest to love. She understood that people sometimes needed the space inside their own thoughts. The shore was the same as it had always been. Black rock, cooled and smooth, stretching along the base of the dead volcanic ridge. Small craters still visible from the meteor shower. The sky overhead was a deep, cold dark, and two of the colony's comm satellites blinked slowly across it. Ren found the spot without looking for it. He just walked, and his feet knew where to stop. There was nothing there now. No indentation in the rock, no blue glow, no vapor seeping from a crack. The place looked like every other place on the shore, but he could remember exactly how it had looked, the half-buried oval, the warmth he had felt even through his gloves, the slow pulse moving through the shell like something stubbornly insisting on existing. He stood there for a while. He was not sure what he was looking for. Maybe he was not looking for anything. Maybe he was just marking it, the place where the story had started, so that he would always know how small it began. He reached into his bag and took out a bundle of cloth. He unwrapped it carefully. The pieces of the shell were all there. He had collected them on the morning after the hatching, picked them up off the floor while Sora slept under the lamps. He had no good reason for keeping them. They were just bits of shell, but they were the first things she had ever shed, and that seemed like something worth holding onto. He wrapped them back up and put them in the bag. He would carry them, that was all. He was back at the airlock when Sora found him, landing behind him with the quiet precision she was still practicing and mostly achieving. She was too large now for the colony corridors, too large for his room. She had spent her last 2 nights in the open area outside the perimeter, and the colony had quietly added her to the settlement log as a temporary resident, which Ren thought was very KFIV of them, practical right up until the end. "Ready," she said. "Almost," he said. She waited. She was good at that. He looked back at the colony, the grey modules, the worn airlock doors, the lights in the windows that meant people inside doing ordinary things. His mother was in there, probably on a call with his grandmother. His father was underground, directing the first deep drill test toward the new deposit. The school would be full again by next season. Other children would walk this shore and find nothing remarkable. "I found you here," he said, not quite to Sora and not quite to himself. "You did," she said. "I almost didn't stop." "But you did," she said, simply without sentiment, just the fact of it. He nodded. He turned away from the shore and walked toward the waiting shuttle, and Sora fell into step beside him, or the closest approximation of in step available to something with a wingspan wider than the shuttle itself. The Dracari carrier was waiting in orbit. Varath was aboard it. A court that did not yet know what to do with Ren was aboard it. A future that nobody had planned for was aboard it. Ren had one bag. The shell pieces were inside it, wrapped carefully in cloth, a change of clothes, his tools. He did not look back again, not because it did not matter, but because it did, and he had already said goodbye in the only language he knew, by standing still in a place for a while and paying attention. The shuttle lifted. KFIV fell away below them, small and grey and alive in a way it had not been a week ago. 15 years later, a Dracari historian would write, in the official record of the Dominion, translated into 47 languages, that the shift in relations between the human species and the Dracari Dominion began not in a council hall or a treaty chamber, but on a dead moon's black shore, where a boy stopped walking because something small and cracked and cold was pulsing with a faint blue light. The humans, when they read it, mostly said they were not surprised. That was the thing about humans. The things that changed the shape of history were rarely the things they had planned. They were usually just a person, in a quiet moment, deciding to stop and help. The Dracari had a word for it now, borrowed from human standard and kept unchanged, because some things do not translate cleanly, and this was one of them. They called it Aldrich. It meant the one who stays.